My name is Alina Park. I'm a 26-year-old woman, and my whole life has been about doing exactly what was expected of me. I grew up in a very traditional Korean-American household in Virginia. Respecting your elders wasn't encouraged, it was mandatory. Disagreeing was seen as disrespect. If I ever stepped out of line, my parents didn't yell. They didn't hit. They just pulled away with cold silence, and somehow that felt worse than any punishment could have. I learned early that being a good daughter meant being invisible when needed, helpful without being asked, and quiet at all times. If there was a mess, I cleaned it up. If there was a problem, I stayed silent and smoothed it over. It didn't matter what I wanted. It only mattered that I didn't create ripples. I have an older brother named Ian. He never followed the same rules. He argued with them often, made his own decisions, moved out at 18 without a second thought. Still, he was praised for being ambitious and independent. Meanwhile, I was always the one left behind, expected to cover up the cracks he left. After Ian moved out, the house got even quieter. Holidays became tense, filled with small talk and sideways glances. Ian still came around when it was convenient, always greeted warmly. While I was judged on my hair, my clothes, even the tone of my voice. I was never the golden child. I was never the rebel either. I was just there, expected to stay there, holding everything together, whether it was fair or not. When it came time for college, I said I wanted to major in anthropology. My parents said it was impractical. They decided nursing would be better, stable, respectable, a good job for a woman. I didn't argue. I applied for nursing school and got in. Every acceptance letter felt like another little part of me disappearing. At 23, I met someone. His name was Caleb. He wasn't Korean, and he worked freelance as a graphic designer. I knew right away my parents wouldn't approve, but I was tired of being lonely. I thought maybe if they met him, they'd see what I saw. They didn't even give him a chance. Without raising their voices, they made it clear he was unreliable, not serious, not good enough for me. The disappointment hung in the air like smoke. I broke up with Caleb within a month. Not because I wanted to, but because the weight of their disapproval felt heavier than anything else. I didn't cry in front of them. I just told them they were right, and that I would focus on work. They nodded, satisfied. Life went on. I kept working, kept doing what was asked, never expecting anything more. Then last year, my grandmother died. She had lived with us since I was a child, and when she passed, all the responsibility of hosting and organizing the family fell on me. I wrote the eulogy, I cooked, I made sure guests were taken care of. My parents stood by and accepted compliments from relatives about how wonderful their daughter was. After the funeral, when the last of the guests had left and the house was quiet again, my mother called me into the kitchen. She spoke like she was giving instructions for a grocery list. It's your time now. We expect you to take care of us when we're old. There was no discussion, no hesitation, just expectation. That night, lying in bed, I realized something. It wasn't rage or sadness. It was a deep, empty certainty. I understood in a way I hadn't before. No matter what I did, their approval would always be conditional. Their love would always come at a price I was tired of paying. So I made a decision. I wasn't going to rebel. I wasn't going to cut them off. I wasn't even going to argue. I would become the daughter they had raised me to be, the one who obeyed every command, who never asked for more, who did exactly what was expected, and not a bit beyond that. If they needed me to show up, I would show up. If they needed me to drive them somewhere, I would drive them. If they needed paperwork filled out, I would do it. But gone were the days of guessing what they needed before they asked. Gone were the days of pouring myself out trying to please them without being told. No extra favors. No emotional labor. No initiative. They told me to be obedient, so I would be. Perfectly. Exactly. Nothing more. What followed wasn't loud. It wasn't explosive, but it changed everything, and it started the slow unraveling of the life they thought they controlled. I never intended for it to escalate the way it did, but when you stop giving more than you are asked, people start noticing. And when they realize they can no longer manipulate you without consequence, things get ugly very fast. This is how everything began. My mother's 60th birthday was coming up, and planning the entire thing was assigned to me without anyone asking if I had the time or even wanted to do it. I was expected to handle everything. Venue, catering, decorations, invitations, music, everything. Like it was a job duty written into my DNA. I didn't argue. I didn't resist. I asked my mother to give me a written list of everything she wanted. She seemed surprised but handed over a messy list scribbled on the back of an old envelope. I read every word carefully, and I did exactly what was written, nothing more. I booked the venue she listed, even though there were better ones available. I ordered the exact food she asked for, no adjustments, even when the caterer suggested a few popular options. I sent out the invitations, copied from the names she gave me, even though I knew some of those people hardly kept in touch anymore. I hired a basic DJ because that's what she wrote. No special live music, no emotional slideshow, no handwritten cards on the tables like I had done for other family events before. The day of the party arrived. Everything was there, lined up like a checklist. Tables were set, lights were right, food was served exactly on time. Guests came, smiled, congratulated her. People ate, danced a little and left. No disasters. No surprises. No magic either. At the end of the night, as we stood near the coat racks, my mother looked around the room one last time. Her face was tight, almost blank. She said, "It was fine. No thank you. No hug. Just fine." Later, as we packed up the leftover decorations, she asked why I hadn't invited her church friend's daughter to sing at the party like she had at someone else's birthday. I told her plainly, she wasn't on the list. My mother's mouth pressed into a thin line, but she didn't answer. When we got home, my father mentioned that the food was too Western and that some of the older guests would have preferred something more traditional. I reminded him that the entire menu had been picked from the list he and my mother gave me. He grumbled something under his breath. and didn't push it. They exchanged a long look between them, but nobody said anything else. 1 week later, my mother called and told me she needed a ride to a specialist appointment 2 hours away. She had picked the date already. No checking if I was free. No asking if I could take time off. I told her I was working that day. I didn't offer to trade shifts. I didn't scramble to find coverage. I didn't apologize. I just said no. She sounded surprised, almost lost for a second, then reminded me that I had always managed these things before. I answered simply, "Unless you schedule it with me in advance, I can't help." Then I ended the call. That evening, my father phoned. He asked if I was feeling okay. I said yes. He asked again, this time slower, as if I hadn't understood the first time. Again, I said yes. There was a long pause, and then he hung up without another word. Later that night, Ian messaged me. He said our parents were acting strange, quieter than usual, a little tense. He asked if something had happened. I answered that I wasn't sure, which was technically true. I hadn't done anything wrong. After that, small things started happening. My parents stopped sending me updates about family gatherings. Before, they would remind me 3 times about dinner at my uncle's house or a cousin's graduation. Now, nothing. Sometimes I found out about events after they happened. They would also forget to send me important information. One time there was a family meeting about my aunt's health issues. They left me off the group text. When I found out later, I didn't ask why. I didn't complain. I let them forget me. Another time, my father needed help setting up his new phone. Normally, I would spend an afternoon troubleshooting everything, even things he didn't ask about. This time, when he texted me the basic question, I sent him the user manual link and told him to follow it. My mother tried to rope me into helping with a church fundraiser. She mentioned it offhandedly at a family lunch, expecting me to pick up the hint like always. I smiled, nodded, and said nothing. 2 weeks later, when she complained that no one had volunteered, I simply said, "That's unfortunate." She blinked, clearly caught off guard, but said nothing more. The cracks kept growing. They were used to me doing emotional work they never even saw as work, checking in, reminding them of things, filling awkward silences at gatherings, smoothing over every little inconvenience without being told. Now, all of that was missing. The house felt emptier, the phone calls shorter. I showed up when specifically asked. I answered questions when asked directly, but there was no extra effort, no guessing games, no rescuing them from their own disorganization. They noticed. They just didn't understand why yet. It was only the beginning. A few months after the birthday dinner, my father called saying he was having trouble accessing his online bank account. He asked if I could come over and help set it up again. I told him I could walk him through the steps over the phone, but I couldn't leave work and come in person. He paused, clearly not expecting that answer, and said that I usually came over to fix things like this. I repeated that I was at work and could not leave in the middle of my shift. Later that evening, I sent him an email with step-by-step instructions and screenshots showing exactly what to do. A few days passed and I heard nothing, so I checked with him to see if everything worked out. He said he hadn't even opened the email. I left it at that. About a week later, my mother texted me in the morning. She said the kitchen sink was leaking. I asked her if she had called a plumber yet. Instead of answering, she said it was probably a simple fix and that I could do it quickly if I stopped by. I didn't reply again after that. Around the same time, my aunt called me like she usually did every month. Halfway through the call, she casually mentioned that my parents seemed a little down lately. She didn't say anything specific but made a vague comment about how important it was to stay mindful of family responsibilities. I told her that I was absolutely mindful, that I was doing exactly what my parents asked of me. Nothing less, nothing more. There was a long silence on the phone before she asked if I was angry. I told her no. I wasn't angry. I just was no longer doing extra things without being asked. The guilt game started picking up not long after. My parents would leave voicemails and texts sprinkled with hints. Messages like, "We don't hear from you much anymore," or "It's lonely getting old." I kept my replies polite but neutral. I said things like, "Hope you're doing well," or "Let me know if you need anything specific." During one phone call, my mother got a little more direct. She told me I used to be such a good daughter. I told her I still was. I reminded her that being a good daughter meant obeying, and I was following that rule perfectly. She didn't know what to say after that. Meanwhile, Ian came back to town for a few days and ended up visiting our parents. That night, he messaged me and asked if everything was okay between me and them. He said the vibe felt weird, like there was tension he couldn't quite explain. I asked him what exactly I had done wrong. He couldn't name anything specific. He just said it felt off. I told him that I had simply stopped doing things no one asked for. I said if they needed help, they could ask, and if I was available, I would help. If not, I wouldn't. Ian didn't push the conversation any further after that. At the next family gathering, the changes became even more obvious. Normally, I would bring a homemade dessert for everyone, decorate the tables, and organize little activities for the kids. This time, I arrived exactly when the invitation said to. I brought a store-bought pie because my mother had specifically asked me to bring dessert, and that was it. When my cousin's toddler started crying and no one knew how to calm her down, several people looked at me automatically, as if waiting for me to fix it. I stayed seated, sipping my drink. I had not been asked. During the meal, my uncle mentioned that he missed my little handmade cards for birthdays. I smiled and said that these days, I only did what was asked. If anyone needed anything, they could let me know. The looks exchanged across the table were something I had never seen before, confused, uneasy. After dinner, people started packing up. Normally, I would be the last one cleaning dishes and stacking chairs. This time, when the host aunt asked if everyone could help tidy up, I helped only with the one table I sat at. Once that was done, I said my goodbyes and left without waiting for anyone to ask if I could stay longer. Later that night, my mother texted me to say thank you for coming but added that the gathering felt different this year. I responded with a simple thank you for inviting me. Over the next few weeks, invitations to small family events still came, but the notes were stiffer. The messages changed from assumptions that I would just handle everything to direct asks. "Can you bring napkins? Can you be here at 5:00 p.m.?" I always answered yes or no clearly, depending on my schedule. If I said yes, I did exactly what was asked. No more, no less. At one point, my mother even asked if I could help plan an upcoming baby shower for a cousin. She asked, very specifically, if I could pick up decorations and help set up tables. I agreed. I picked up decorations exactly as requested. I helped arrange tables exactly as directed. But I didn't create centerpieces, I didn't bring extra party favors, and I didn't organize games like I used to. Each small action, or non-action, started to stack up. Every time I followed the exact words instead of the unspoken expectations, it chipped away at the old system my parents had relied on for years. They noticed. Everyone noticed. And yet, none of them could call it rebellion, because I was doing everything they asked, and nothing more. Thanksgiving was coming up, and normally by early November, I would have already been deep into planning mode, calling caterers, scrubbing my parents' house from top to bottom, making shopping lists, organizing table settings, making sure every little thing was perfect. This year, I waited. I did not offer. I did not plan. I simply went about my regular days until someone asked me directly. A week before Thanksgiving, my mother finally texted me. She asked if I could bring mashed potatoes and a bag of napkins. That was it. No list of 20 things. No phone call expecting me to take charge. Just that short message. So I made one tray of mashed potatoes. I bought a pack of napkins at the store. On Thanksgiving Day, I arrived exactly at the time listed on the invitation, not early to help set up like usual. I handed my mother the food and the napkins at the door and went to sit down with the rest of the family. Right away, it was clear that something was wrong. People started trickling in with confused looks. The turkey was still finishing up in the oven, and the side dishes were only partially set up, missing the usual polished presentation. A few people whispered, trying to figure out if they had missed an earlier meal or if there was some change of plans no one had been told about. The tables were half set. There were no extra chairs for the surprise guests that always showed up every year. No music playing softly in the background. No candles. Just a cold, half-finished setup that looked nothing like the usual warm Thanksgiving our family was used to. My mother walked around looking flustered but tried to play it off. At one point, she came over to where I was sitting and quietly said something about needing some help. I smiled at her and asked if she needed anything specific. She just pressed her lips together, shook her head, and stormed off toward the kitchen. An older cousin leaned over to me and asked why I was just sitting there instead of saving the day like I usually did. I shrugged and told her I had done exactly what I was asked to do. As the afternoon dragged on, people started getting restless. The turkey was still in the oven long past the scheduled mealtime. Kids were getting cranky. Some relatives started joking loudly about the missing desserts and bare tables, trying to laugh it off but clearly noticing the difference. When the turkey finally came out, it was dry and unevenly cooked because no one had remembered to baste it regularly. The mashed potatoes were there, along with a few random side dishes some relatives had brought last minute, but there was no coordination. Some guests whispered to each other that this year felt different, cheaper somehow, like corners had been cut. Ian pulled me aside after dinner and asked why I hadn't jumped in to help fix things like I always did. I looked him straight in the eye and told him I helped exactly as I had been asked. He opened his mouth like he was going to argue but closed it again without saying anything. Throughout the evening, I caught my parents exchanging tight, embarrassed looks every time a relative commented about how disorganized everything was this year. Distant relatives who did not know all the family dynamics made little jokes about how even traditions are cutting corners now. My mother's face stayed stiff the entire night. After dinner, instead of the usual flurry of cleaning and packing leftovers, people started leaving pretty quickly. My mother kept dropping hints about needing help in the kitchen, glancing pointedly at me every few minutes. I kept my smile polite and said that since she hadn't asked for anything, I would just take my dish home. I hugged only the relatives who came up to me directly, thanked the hosts for the dinner, and left before the dishes even started getting washed. The next morning, my phone rang. It was my mother. As soon as I answered, she jumped straight to telling me how embarrassed she was in front of everyone. I listened quietly until she finished. Then I said, I did exactly what you asked. Nothing more. I hung up after that. That Thanksgiving was the first major family gathering where the full weight of the event didn't land on my shoulders. No one could blame me for doing too little because I did exactly what had been requested, nothing less, nothing more. For years, my parents had leaned on me without even realizing it. When that silent support was taken away, their carefully maintained image cracked right in front of everyone. And it was only the beginning. December came fast, and with it, a new shift I had not seen coming. My parents called a family lunch at a restaurant they liked to use for important announcements. Everyone gathered, dressed a little more formally than usual. I showed up on time, sat where my name was placed, and waited. When most of the food had been served, my father stood up and cleared his throat. He made a little speech about how important it was to support the next generation and build strong men to carry the family name. I listened without reacting, even when a few relatives glanced over at me. After the speech, my mother stood and handed Ian a small envelope with both hands, making a little bow like it was some sacred tradition. He took it, looking a little uncomfortable, but thanked them quietly. I caught a snippet of a conversation between two aunts at the next table, saying the money came from my late grandmother's savings, set aside to help Ian get ahead. I didn't get an envelope. No one even hinted at it. It was clear I wasn't being included in that particular future. I just nodded when others clapped politely and stayed seated. After lunch, when people were lingering over coffee, my aunt slid into the chair next to me. She whispered that my parents had always thought I would be the one to stay close, not Ian. I smiled at her and said lightly, I guess I'm just doing what they raised me to do. She looked confused but did not press further. A week later, Christmas plans started forming. Usually my mother would organize a big family shopping day, where she would invite me and then somehow I would end up driving everyone, paying for extra gifts for my younger cousins, and handling every tiny meltdown or shopping mishap. This year, when my mother texted me about the girls' shopping trip, I responded immediately and asked, "Are you asking me to come as a guest or as a driver?" There was a long pause before she texted back that, of course, it was as a guest. I agreed to come but planned carefully. I arrived right at the agreed meeting time and joined them only for the group breakfast they had scheduled first. As soon as the plates were cleared and people started pulling out shopping lists, I politely excused myself and left. Later, my younger cousins complained to my mother that I had not helped pick out gifts or driven them around like usual. My mother called me the next day, cornering me with the complaint that I was acting like a stranger. I answered evenly, "You wanted obedience, not closeness." She stayed quiet for a few seconds and then hung up. Meanwhile, small ripples were happening across the family. People who were used to me being the safe fallback, organizer, cleaner, peacemaker, started noticing my absence. At a small gathering for my uncle's retirement, where normally I would be wrangling the kids, setting up chairs, and collecting photos for a group gift, but I sat and made polite conversation instead. When someone asked if I had put together the photo board like last time, I smiled and said I had not been asked. More side eyes, more confusion, no explosions, just silence where noise used to be. A few days before Christmas, my mother called again and asked if I could host Christmas Eve dinner at my apartment like I had the year before. I asked what specifically they would need from me, menu, guest count, time frame. She hesitated, then said not to worry about it. I said okay, and ended the call. Christmas Eve came, and as expected, they scrambled last minute to throw something together at their own house. Ian and I both showed up on time. I brought a small dish because they had asked everyone to bring something potluck style. I stayed for dinner, thanked them afterward, and left without offering to help clean up. At one point during dinner, my father loudly thanked Ian for being the kind of son that carries family values forward. Several people looked toward me, but I just continued eating like nothing had happened. The cracks in their carefully built image grew bigger. They had built a system based on silent loyalty, service that was expected but never rewarded. And now, when the service stopped and the loyalty was measured in actual requests and real effort, they realized they had very little left to lean on. After New Year's, Ian texted me asking if I was okay because our parents were being weird with him too now. He said they seemed irritable, touchy about small things. I told him simply that maybe they were just learning how to live without someone always picking up the slack. He didn't argue. And so the quiet shifting continued, piece by piece, in full view of a family that had never expected the foundation to move underneath them. New Year's was always one of the biggest events for my family. It was packed with rituals meant to bring luck and blessings for the year ahead. There were rules about what to wear, what to eat, what time to show up, and even which direction to face during certain parts of the night. Every year before this, I would be the one making sure everything stayed perfect, decorating the tables, coordinating food deliveries, setting up photo booths, lighting candles exactly at midnight. This year, about a week before New Year's Eve, I received an email from my parents. It was not a request, it was an assignment list. The email listed what dish I needed to bring, what time I needed to arrive, what color I had to wear, white and gold only, and a reminder to bring a small offering for the altar. I read it carefully and followed every instruction to the letter. I wore a white blouse and gold earrings. I cooked exactly the food item they listed. No side dishes, no desserts, no extra treats. I arrived exactly 5 minutes before the time stated. Not early enough to be asked to help set up, not late enough to be rude. I smiled, nodded, and greeted everyone politely. I stayed seated unless someone specifically asked for help. I did not offer to arrange the decorations. I did not fix the sagging banner over the fireplace. I did not step into the kitchen when my mother started snapping at people about the missing candles. A family friend pulled my mother aside during the evening and quietly mentioned that I seemed quieter than usual this year. I caught the comment but pretended not to hear. My mother brushed it off quickly and pasted on a smile, but her shoulders stayed tight for the rest of the night. When it came time for the ritual where the elders blessed the younger generation, Ian went first. My parents placed their hands lightly on his shoulders and spoke long blessings over him, about success, leadership, bringing honor to the family name. The room nodded approvingly. A few aunts dabbed their eyes with tissues. When it was my turn, my parents spoke shorter, vaguer words. They talked about the importance of humility. They mentioned that daughters who support their families quietly are a true blessing. There was no mention of leadership, no talk of success, just support and obedience. I bowed deeply and thanked them. No protest, no anger, just pure compliance. After the ceremony, as people started eating and laughing again, my father came up to me near the dessert table. He asked why I had not prepared the photo albums this year, the albums I usually put together with pictures of all the family milestones from the past year. I answered simply that it had not been in the instructions they sent me. He blinked a few times, then walked away without saying anything else. Later that evening, while most of the guests were distracted with karaoke, my mother cornered me near the kitchen sink. She asked when I had stopped caring about the family. I answered calmly that I cared enough to obey exactly how they raised me, to follow every instruction without complaint, to be polite, to not cause trouble. She stared at me for a long moment, like she was seeing a stranger. Then she turned back to the kitchen without saying another word. The night wound down awkwardly. Normally I would have stayed late helping pack leftovers into neat containers, wiping counters, setting up breakfast trays for the morning. This time I stayed only until the last formal ritual ended. I hugged the elders who came up to me first, thanked my parents for hosting, and left. When I got home, Ian called. His voice was hesitant. He apologized for accepting the inheritance money so publicly at the family lunch in December. He said he did not know how to refuse it without causing a scene. I told him not to worry. I meant it. It had never been about the money. It was about the message, and I had already read it loud and clear. As I changed out of my clothes and put the small white and gold offering back in my closet, I thought about how different the night had been compared to the years before. No extra work for me. No invisible glue holding everything together. No unspoken sacrifices being made quietly in the background. They had built a structure where loyalty only meant silent service, where being a good daughter meant giving and giving without being asked. Now that I was only giving what was directly requested, they realized how empty that structure actually was. I did not feel sad about it. I did not feel angry, or even bitter. I was detached. They had spent years shaping the relationship they wanted. I was finally living inside it exactly as they had always asked. A few weeks after New Year's, I got a short message from my mother asking if I could meet them for lunch. No explanation, just a time and a place. Out of courtesy, I agreed. They picked a small Korean restaurant we used to go to when I was a kid, one tucked away in a quiet plaza that had barely changed over the years. When I arrived, they were already seated at a corner table. I noticed there were 3 chairs instead of 2. The third chair was pushed back slightly, its place setting untouched. I figured maybe they had invited someone else who did not show up. We ordered quickly. Simple dishes, bibimbap, dumplings, a couple of side soups. The conversation stayed stiff and surface level while we waited for the food. They asked about my work schedule. My mother mentioned a distant cousin's upcoming wedding. My father made a comment about the unusually cold winter this year. No one mentioned the real reason we were meeting. The food came, and we started eating. Halfway through the meal, my father set down his chopsticks and leaned in slightly. He said they had noticed I was different lately. He said it carefully, like he was stepping around something fragile. I nodded and told them that I was simply doing exactly what they raised me to do. Be respectful, obedient, and dutiful. Nothing more, nothing less. My mother's eyes filled with tears almost immediately. It was not anger. It was not even shame exactly. It looked more like something crumbling from inside her. My father's face stayed stiff and unreadable, his hands resting tightly against the table's edge. My mother tried to explain that everything they did was because they wanted what was best for me. I listened for a moment before gently interrupting her. I told her it had always been about what they wanted, not what I wanted. She started to open her mouth again, maybe to defend herself, but stopped halfway, as if even she knew the words would sound empty. I explained that I loved them. I respected them. I appreciated the sacrifices they had made. But I was finished with the invisible emotional labor they never saw. I would no longer volunteer myself for tasks, or read their moods, or smooth things over without being asked. From now on, if they invited me somewhere, I would come if I could. If they asked for help, I would help if I was available. If they needed something, they could tell me directly. But I would not guess anymore. I would not stretch myself thinner than what was asked. I was not punishing them. I was not angry. I was just finally living by the rules they had raised me to follow. My parents stayed quiet after that. My father nodded once, short and stiff. My mother wiped her eyes with a napkin, but did not argue anymore. We finished the meal, mostly in silence. I paid for my own food when the check came and watched them do the same. No one reached across the table. No one tried to fill the space that had opened between us. When we stood up, my mother reached out awkwardly. I hugged her briefly, a quick automatic hug that felt more like closing a book than opening a door. I smiled politely, told them to take care, and walked out into the chilly afternoon. The sky was gray and heavy with clouds, the sidewalk still dusted with salt from an earlier snowfall. I pulled my jacket tighter around me and kept walking. For the first time in my life, I felt completely free. Not bitter, not sad, not even angry. Just free. They had spent my entire life telling me what a good daughter should be. Dutiful, obedient, humble. I had listened. I had become exactly that, but now they were seeing the truth of what they had asked for. A daughter who obeyed the letter of their expectations, but not the invisible spirit they had always relied on. A daughter who loved quietly, but no longer bent herself into invisible shapes to keep them comfortable. There were no slammed doors, no screaming matches, no dramatic ultimatums. Just a silent, heavy goodbye folded inside an ordinary lunch at a restaurant none of us would probably visit again. And in that goodbye, something shifted permanently. They had built the rules. I was just finally playing by them. And for once, that was enough.